The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hello and welcome to our advanced webinar this morning, or this afternoon, sorry. My name is Bevan Anderson. We'll just wait for everyone to attend and hopefully you should be able to see my, no, I don't want that. I want to share my iPad. So hopefully you should be able to see my iPad. In the box, there should be a question box, so you can type in a question if you want us to cover something. Otherwise, I have a list of things that I will be going through. So just stand by a minute or so and we'll get started. So good afternoon and welcome to AvPlan EFB's advanced webinar for Australian pilots. So here we'll be covering information sort of that we assume that you know sort of how to create a plan on the screen and so on. So then we'll go through some sort of specialized options around the map page and some of the more advanced features around IFR planning and so on. And then, yeah, a whole bunch of different things. So if you've got any things around planning, weather and other miscellaneous items. So yeah, thanks very much for joining us. So if you don't know me, I'm Bevan Anderson. I'm the founder and CEO of AvSoft Australia, the creators of AvPlan EFB. And yes, we're all working at home, just like half the world at the moment. So what we've got here is a iPad. This is my iPad mini, for example. I've got the Mega VFR map and it's showing where I am. It's showing things like active airspace and not active airspace. We also highlight things on the map such as no-tammed areas. So you can see the ESAL CTR is yellow. That means there's a no-tam present for that. That CTR will be active in the future, but isn't currently active. So we'll do some advanced sort of, we'll create a flight plan, a VFR plan, and we'll just do some things around creating some waypoints. So to create a new flight plan, we tap New Plan above Store Plans. AvPlan automatically uses the same aircraft and call sign and power setting that we used before. And we'll do a VFR flight plan today. We can use the quick edit box here to type in where we're going. So from Rabin to Albury and tap return. It automatically does a straight line route. I've got auto waypoints in plan turned on, so it's automatically populated a flight plan with a critical point. I'll actually go and turn that off under settings and then auto waypoints in plan. I don't want to see that. Sorry, I didn't prepare. But there we go. Back to our flight plan. Now, for example, say we wanted to fly over a particular place, like Greater South. We can quickly insert a user waypoint by tapping, holding, drag the flight plan where we want to go, and then tap Insert Flight Plan. This gives us a latitude, longitude, a bearing and distance from our current position, and the height of the ground at that place, 853 feet, and the grid lower safe in that area is 7,100 feet. Tap on that row to insert the point into our flight plan, and there we have it in here. obviously it automatically downloads the winds and all that sort of stuff, populates our flight plan up here. It's got a horrible name. We can give it its own normal name or something a bit more meaningful by tapping on the waypoint on the map. Brings up the waypoint details page. We can tap edit and change its name. So we can tap on that and we can type in Greta and then tap return. So it's changed there. We can see it, the latitude, longitude, magnetic variation, the forecast area, and so on. If we tap away, that'll save, and you can see our waypoint's now named Greta, and it's in our flight plan as Greta as well. So it's a quick way of inserting a user waypoint and giving it a meaningful name. We can also create user waypoints from street addresses. The only way to do that is under the planning page and user waypoints. And we can add a user waypoint. In here, we can create waypoints just by typing in the latitude and longitude. We can create a user waypoint from a street address, and we can create one from a known location by bearing and distance. Now, if you have any questions, feel free to type them in. We've got a lot of people on the call, so we won't be opening the mic up for questions maybe until the end. And you can ask an individual question, because otherwise with all these people, it could get a little bit out of hand. So yeah, if you've got a question that's easy and quick, just type it in. Otherwise, we'll open up later. So AvPlan EFB includes a pretty comprehensive terrain and obstacle database. You can turn on obstacles under map settings and then view obstacles. And that works in two modes. When we're flight planning, so we're in plan mode, we can see the obstacles around our flight, the ones that are charted, and they're color coded based on our flight planned altitude. So our flight planned altitude is currently the ground, so everything will be red. If we change that to say 2,500 feet, some will disappear and some will be yellow and some will be red. So the red ones are still a factor, yellow ones are less so, and obviously the ones that aren't are completely clear. Additionally, the terrain overlay works in a similar fashion. So tap map settings and then terrain, and then that color codes terrain based on our flight planned altitude of 2,500 feet. If we change our flight planned altitude to 4,500, for example, you'll see that changes. The areas of red get smaller. Now, when we're in flight mode, these warnings use the current GPS altitude for your flight plan to color code terrain and obstacles. I'm sitting on the ground here at home, so all the obstacles around us have turned red, and obviously the ground has turned red because it's all going to be a factor. So then tap plan, and it goes back to just showing the planned, the obstacles and terrain based on your flight plan. And we can turn it off, map settings, terrain overlay. So one little tip is if you're using the app and all the maps turn red, it's not that they're not downloaded or something, it's the terrain overlays turned on and you're in fly mode. So then it's color coding things based on you being in flight at ground level. Now there's, with this terrain and obstacle database, we can do really clever things around calculating lower safe altitudes. When we fly, by default, AvPlan will automatically populate the grid, the highest grid lower safe altitude in your flight plan. It will also do this in the HUD that's at the top of the screen as well. The HUD will populate a lower safe altitude value based on either the IFR route that you're planning down, but if you fly off that route, it'll then go back to, or go and show you the grid lower safe for the area that you're in. And if you're not flying down an airway like we are here, it's showing you the highest grid lower safe for a buffer around your flight plan. So in this case, it's a 10 nautical mile buffer, so it's the highest grid lower safe within 10 nautical miles of your track. Now we can bring up a lower safe altitude calculator. This is one of our premium options. So this is by default a 10 nautical mile buffer around your flight plan. Now the lower safe altitude calculator, which we can bring up by double tapping on the track, brings up the tool. This is a premium thing. The calculator here is a premium option, but every user will see the buffer around the route there. By default, that's 5 nautical miles, which is the standard IFR calculator size. And what it's doing here is it's showing us the highest obstacle and the highest terrain that's within that buffer. The theory of the lower safe altitude calculator is it's designed so I can actually check that it's found the right thing. So have I found the highest obstacle? It looks like I have around there, but we can keep checking. And have I found the highest piece of terrain? Now you'll notice that we've said the terrain is 3,500 feet, while the spot out on the chart is 3,304 feet. Now our terrain database doesn't exactly match the one that Auslig used to produce the chart, but it's accurate within 50 or so feet. We actually then rounded up to the next 100 feet just to be sure. So that's why there can be a slight discrepancy between here and here. And we can then check and make sure that we've got the right values. And once we're happy with that, we can tap accept. And then it populates a user lower safe altitude at that value. So we populated 4,900 feet to be the lower safe altitude. Now by default, it uses the IFR buffer of 5 nautical miles. In every case, you'll need to, if you want a different calculation, you can tap setup and then change it to be something else. So for example, a VFR 10 nautical mile buffer. You notice now that it's found some different terrain that's a bit higher, 4,372 feet, but it still has that same obstacle. So the highest terrain is here, the highest obstacle, and then it calculates a lower safe altitude. So that's based on the AAP rules around 1,360 feet above the highest terrain and 1,000 feet above the highest obstacle, and then whatever's the highest of those two things. And then once we're happy with that, we can tap accept. So looking at another example, so Greta to Aubrey, we can tap set up here and use different method, say NavADR method, and then you get a interesting splay looking like that, which is the old way we used to do things. So say we wanted to do some measuring. AvPlan EFB incorporates a ruler, and with a 2-finger tap and hold, we bring up the ruler. We can use that for measuring tracks and distances. So you can then rotate it, and that ruler will stay there until you zoom the chart, and then it'll disappear. So 2-finger tap and hold brings up the ruler. We can then move it around, measure things, and it's showing us the magnetic heading and distance in each direction, because that can be different, especially as the route, the line you're measuring gets longer. And yeah, we're correctly measuring a great circle, because if you do things like very long distances, you can see there that that line is actually curved, which follows the actual great circle path, because a straight line on these charts isn't a straight line, or a direct route on these charts isn't a straight line, it's actually a curve. And that goes for all our calculations and depictions of routes, so no matter how long they are, they're actually correct. So with the ruler, 2-finger tap and hold, and then it stays there until you zoom the chart, it disappears. The heads-up display is a great way to have relevant flight information appear inside the app. So to turn on the heads-up display, you tap Map Settings, and then Show HUD. Brings up the head-up display with various fields, altitude based on the GPS. The grid low is safe in our area because we're not flying down an IFR route. Tracks, TASs and ground speeds, distances, times, and the current and next area frequency that we're flying in. Now that's not all that it depicts. We can tap and hold on these cells, and we can see a whole bunch of other information that you may want to add or replace in those cells. So latitude, longitude, the GPS error, the current and next airspace that you're in, cross-track error, height AGL, there's a timer there, stop, start, reset timer, bearing, ETA to your destination, rate of descent to your destination, current QNH based on the newest METAR, surface wind based on the nearest METAR, QNH at your destination, and the current barrier altitude. Now, when we're flying along, the HUD will depict our information about our active leg. It flashes when something changes. So yeah, we're now flying from Moorabbin to Greta. It's populated our user lower safe. When we fly off track to a certain degree, it'll then replace that with the grid lower safe. Tracks and headings, TES's ground speed, all that. So that all makes sense. You can also note on the chart the active leg is magenta. And then, so we've flown past Greta, the app then transitions to the next waypoint automatically. And the previous waypoint's now, or the previous leg is now blue, the current leg is magenta. Then when we reach our destination, we can pop the app into plan mode, which stops things like the track log recording and so on. Now, AvPlan's always downloading and updating weather information, winds aloft, TAS, METARs, NOTAMs, and that kind of thing. So we do things with that information, such as place these coloured dots in your nav log, and they indicate the current weather. Green being beautiful VFR, blue being BLEFR, but the cloud's less than 2,500 feet, and there's a few other parameters. Yellow means cloud, and viz is sort of 1,000 feet or less than 5 Ks, and then red is clouds less than 500 feet. When we tap on a waypoint in our flight plan here, we can also see things like weather and other information about it very quickly. We can go, direct to that point, beginning and end of daylight and lat and long. There's the METAR, the TAF, NOTAMs, weather cam. All of this stuff is in both plain text and encoded. So there's the encoded form. If we tap on it with our finger, we can get the plain text. So cloud is scattered 4,000, temperature 17 degrees, QNH 1014. Tap waypoint details to go back. Similarly with the TAF, we can tap on that and get that all decoded. So with the TAF, the current period is always the blue text here. And you can see the current period here as well, and the temperatures and QNH forecasts as well. NOTAMs shows you any NOTAMs. Oh yeah, fair enough. And then if we want to mark it as red, we can tap that and it all collapses down into just one single line. So hides it away. Weather cams, these have been around for a little while, but they just show you the current weather, particular point. We can change which camera up here. Looks like a beautiful day in Albury. Why aren't we all flying? Keep scrolling. We get communication detail for that place, so that we can quickly see what the ATIS is, CTAF, tower frequency, and so on. And any associated nav aids, there's the VOR DME frequency. And then the charts, so aerodrome charts and approach plates and so on. You notice some charts have this sort of arrow with a box or with a map. That's how we can quickly overlay a airport diagram or an approach plate on the map. So everyone can overlay approach plates, airport diagrams on the map, and premium subscribers can overlay approach plates as well. So for example, if you want to overlay this RNAV, we can tap the overlay button and it places the RNAV on the chart. With any of the plate overlays, we can change the opacity with the slider control down here. And if we don't want to see it anymore, we can tap clear. Now the airport diagrams are somewhat special in the fact that we can just zoom into a place that has a georeferenced taxi diagram. So for example, Wangaratta, and it automatically just appears. And that happens for all subscribers. Again, if we want to change the opacity, we can here, just bring out the underlying chart. And if we don't want to see it anymore, we can tap clear. Similarly, when we get to Albury, we can just zoom in on the map and the taxi diagram appears. So plates can also be overlaid on the map by finding them in the terminal page. As you probably know, the easiest way to get to a particular airport information on the terminal page, where there's lots of detail, is from the tapping on the leg in the navlog. So if I tap on Albury, it takes me to the terminal page for Albury. And here I have access to locate the place on the map, look at the weather cam, look at the comms, the MET, the NOTAMs, the winds aloft, and so on. And we can swipe to find the particular chart that we want. I can use a 3-finger tap on the screen to bring up thumbnails of all the things to quickly find one. Let's go to the VORA. Brings up the VORA, and we can use the squiggle button and overlay it on the map. Show chart on map. And up it comes. Back to the terminal page. Again, we can swipe for a different chart. Tap the squiggle button. Show chart on map. You notice with our plate overlay, they sit behind things like the flight plan and the airspace, so you can see that depicted on top of the approach and sort of see how that can be a factor. Additionally, weather and traffic information appears above the approach plate and so on. And you can then see how things like weather and traffic can affect an approach you're going to fly. The maps have the ability to add annotations. That means sort of text and other drawing things to the actual map itself. So this is the equivalent of getting a pen and paper and drawing on a chart. So tap the map settings button and then annotate map to bring up the chart annotator tool. So here it is. We're now editing the chart, and we can either draw or we can add text. So with a certain color and other parameters. So it looks like we're using a red kind of pen at the moment. So we can just draw, and we can use a pencil and draw things in. I'm using my finger for whatever reason. I can use the undo thing to undo what I've written. Now, the beauty of these annotations is that it updates across all your devices in real time. So if you've got 2 iPads, any notes that you've made on one will synchronize to the other and so on. We can also add text as well. So you can say, you put a note here, ring, taxi, and then there's a note. We can actually also pick it up and move it around if we want. And then when we're finished, we can tap done, and there we go. And it sits there on our map for forever. We can do similar things to the terminal page. We can annotate them as well. Either tap the Maps Google button, annotate chart to start the annotations. You get the same tools, and you can draw on here as well. You could also use it as a highlighter and highlight things like, the path of approach you're going to fly and so on. The idea. We can delete everything by tapping the little delete button, and then done when we're done. And again, once you annotate a chart on one device, those annotations will copy across your devices as well. Remaining on the terminal page, if we tap the book icon, under airport charts here on the right-hand side, you can see all the particular plates for the airport that you're looking at. At the top it says favorites, but I don't seem to have any favorites. We can add a chart to be a favorite. So, if you're going on a flight, that might be the taxi diagram of your departure point, an instrument approach for your departure point, the instrument approach that you anticipate at your destination, and the taxi diagram. And then you will have quick access to whatever chart in the top of the favorite. So, for example, I can tap the star button here on the right-hand side to favorite the aerodrome chart and say a RNAV approach. And then they both appear up here. We can do this same thing from Moorabbin or any other airport. We can type in the identifier, IMMB, and we can favorite the aerodrome diagram and an approach if we have to come back in a hurry. So there we have favorites for applied here. Now, if you want to go to one, we can just tap on it with our finger, and it opens that particular plate. There's our RNAV. Back to the book icon, and let's go to the Albury aerodrome diagram, and there it is. Back to the favorites. If we want to get rid of one, you just tap on the particular star and it takes it out of our favorites list. And away it goes. So now I've removed 2 and we're just left with 2 for Albury, for example. Now, one other neat feature that we can do with our terrain database and all the weather we have on the device is to calculate a sort of a glide range ring for your aircraft. We can do that when it's in flight, and also when you're flight planning, we can show where you'll be in your flight plan and be able to glide to a particular or glide to an airport. So under map settings again, we can turn on the airport glide range function, which is one of those ones that has two modes. So one mode is when we're flight planning, and then one when we're on the ground. So we're in plan mode at the moment. So at our flight planned altitude of now 9,000 feet, we can see the airports around our flight, and then if we're within that grey circle, we have the ability to glide and land at that airfield. You can see that there's an area here that's out of glide range, so we may actually want to change our flight path slightly. So if we fly a bit over this way here, we'll have better chance of remaining in glide distance of a particular airport or an airport. So yeah, there's an example of just slightly optimizing our route and sort of increasing our ability to land on a runway or an airport. So these buffers take into account terrain and the current winds aloft. So you can see here's an example of an airfield that's constrained by terrain in one direction, and it's got a circle, but it's all been chomped up because of a ridge line probably to the west, sorry. Now this responds to altitude changes. So if we change our altitude to 5,000, you'll see those circles getting a lot smaller. Those circles correspond to an engine failure occurring and being at best glide and arriving above the runway at 1,500 feet ADL. So it gives you room to maneuver from that point to the actual whatever runway suits. Now we're using a couple of parameters from your aircraft model. There's a glide indicated airspeed and a glide ratio in your aircraft model, which is done under settings and then aircraft type database. So in there you can specify a glide ratio. So something like 9:1 glide ratio would be just the number 9. If your glide ratio is 7.5:1, or is just pop in 7.5. Changing that glide ratio will obviously change the size of these rings. The better your glide, the bigger the ring. But just use the values that are in the operating handbook for your aircraft. Now, when we're in flight, which I can't show you right now because we're sitting on the ground, you get a green blob, and we call it the blob because it morphs as you fly along. So it again is looking at the forecast winds aloft. It's looking at the terrain and the characteristics of your aircraft and showing you where you can glide to. And it uses the same calculation, so it's taking to a point 1,500 feet AGL. Now, as you move, that blob changes in shape because the terrain below you is probably constantly changing. So if I pop myself in fly mode, all those grey circles will disappear. We also show you what the nearest airport is and its bearing and distance as a little pop-up as well as you're flying along. So we can turn that off under map settings, and then airport glide range. And away it goes. Now, a couple of useful things. Once you enter a flight plan into AvPlan EFB, and this can be just like we've done here. We don't need to file a flight plan, but once we have one entered, our systems in the background are monitoring your flight and monitoring the weather. And if the weather starts changing, we'll start sending you notifications. So we do that. We look at your flight plan, and then if there's a new SIGMET or AirMet that's issued that is applicable for your flight plan, we'll send it to you as a notification. And additionally, if there's a NOTAM that's issued for a flight plan, a NOTAM, an airport in your flight plan that'll be valid when you arrive, we'll send it to you as a notification. And if there's an amended TAF or a SPECI META that's issued, we'll send you for your origin or destination waypoints, we'll send that to you. And they're available under flight status, and you can see what the current status of that is. And they'll appear here as messages. And then once you read them, there's a little read thing. You get a indication of like a little chart, a little map as well, showing your flight plan and the applicable weather, so you can see where it affects you and so on. We've got some other things planned for flight status, which you may or may not be able to guess based on the information here. But yeah, that's in development still, sorry. So you won't see that. Now we'll go and do some sort of advanced sort of flight planning. So we'll go back to our en route page. We have a whole route optimizer and route calculator. This is more for the people who fly IFR. So we can put in a departure and destination here and choose the way we want to fly there. Fly direct, fly by stored IFR routes, the shortest IFR route that we can calculate for you. And lastly, we can search for and copy any recently filed flight plans between the two places. So here's some recently filed flight plans, and we could tap on one to actually duplicate it and put it on our device. In this case, we'll pick L1. When we put in an IFR plan, it automatically populates things like, nav aids with their frequencies, IFR routes, and their lower safe altitudes. Any places with, weather and so on will again see their little color-coded icons. So that's the weather here at Wangaratta. Now, let's suppose this is only the first flight of the day and we want to create a second stage. So one of the ways of creating a second stage, and with AvPlan EFB, there's usually more than one way to skin a cat these days. We can swipe on the row of our flight plan and it exposes this More button. We can tap on that and we get this menu. To create a landing point, we can say land here. And it then creates a landing point, and we're now departing Albury. We could type our destination here, which let's say we're going to go on to Tamworth, or we can tap the plus to add Tamworth up here, which is another way of adding a waypoint. If we don't know how to what the airport identifier is for a place, we can just type its name in here and then search through the list, and we have a bunch of waypoints here, and we can see, oh, there's Tamworth. So we can tap the blue plus to add it to our flight plan. So again, it's lovely weather there too. You can see it at a glance. We can tap route and find the shortest IFR route to fly. Looks like a beautiful flight. Now, let's propose that, oh, actually, the weather's not that good. We need to add an alternate for Albury. There's now many different ways of adding an alternate. We can pop the plan in edit mode and so on, but one way, which is very quick and simple, is to find the place we want to be our alternate on the map. So let's say Griffith. We'll tap on the airport icon for Griffith, brings up the Waypoint details page for Griffith. And if we scroll all the way down the bottom, we can add different types of waypoints, alternates. So we can add destination alternates or en route alternates. Destination is an alternate for our destination, and an en route alternate, which premium subscribers will see, is a en route alternate, so that if, say for example, you're flying a twin and you can do things like that's where you would go in single engine operations and so on. So we don't know which stage we want to be our alternate in this point, so we can't just add one. So we can say, well, we want to add that as a destination alternate for stage 1. It now adds alternate on here. So you can see it here as a grey leg. You can also see it on the map depicted as a grey line. So there's a line from our arrival point to our alternate. The obstacle warnings have picked out the nearest obstacles and so on. So another way of creating alternates and basically doing any work on a 2-stage flight plan or multiple stage flight plan is to pop the plan in edit mode. In edit mode, it allows us to do a bunch of interesting things. One is we can quickly delete waypoints with this delete button down here. We can rearrange waypoints with this control here, and we just use our finger to do that, as you can see. TASs can be, your TAS can actually be altered here if you want to change it, and it'll be saved and used in calculations. And the winds aloft can also be changed as well. So this would be an example of if you're away from internet access and you want to enter winds, your own winds, you can pop the plan in edit mode and enter wind information in here. You can also add legs to your flight plan. So in here, we can add another place, for example, and we can choose to add that as an alternate. So that's another way of adding alternates to our flight plan in different legs of our flight plan, and then dismiss. Once we've finished doing the changes we want to make, we can then tap the edit control to take the plan out of edit mode. Once we've got a route into our app, we can very quickly actually file this as a flight plan. So tap planning and then submit ICAO flight plan. And we made some great changes to this probably about a year and a bit ago, that expanded into basically a full flight plan form, where you can change pretty much everything about your flight plan. And it also, everything you change in the file flight plan screen flows back into the flight plan or the aircraft model. So next time you reuse it, it's all correct. So to file a flight plan, it asks for this information here, Nate's username and password, and so on. Flight rules, so we'll actually fly IFR, or and we can do this for multiple stages. So using the button up the top right, we can change from being stage 1 or stage 2. But I'll stick to stage 1 for the moment. It's G, we've got one aircraft. There's the aircraft we're currently using. Call sign, registration, ICAO, type, performance category. All these avionics things are pulled from your aircraft profile, and if we make a change here, it will flow back into the aircraft profile. Next time you reuse that aircraft, it will be correct. Departure point, people on board. Let's say we're going to have a few more than that. 3 people on board today. Any fields that you haven't filled in that are required are highlighted, so you can see this sort of green tint. So we can tap ETD and enter in our departure time. So at 4:54 UTC, say we don't know where we are and whatever, we can change that to be local time. So that's 2:54. Let's say we're going to leave at 3:45 p.m. We can change that there. And it populates our ETD, the UTC time of our ETD in here. We've got our route. That can't be edited, so we can't edit that here. The place to edit your flight plan is always over here. We can say what altitude we're going to fly at. Now we could enter that over here, or I'll show you what happens if we tap on this. It actually uses and brings up the optimize altitude function, and we can look at the most optimum altitude to fly at based on aircraft performance and so on, highlighting the correct hemispherical levels. We don't force you to fly above the lower safe altitude, so just be aware of that. So let's say we're going to fly at 9,000 feet. So it populates 9,000 in here. There's our TAS, en route time endurance. That looks awfully small. I think we've forgotten to put fuel in the tanks, but that's okay because we can tap on this and enter fuel. So let's say we're going to have 60 gallons on board, which is about right for an SR22. So we've added 60 gallons of fuel. We've got our en route time of 47 minutes, and we have 3 hours and 40 of fuel on board. We can enter in any remarks, other details. So this is where, all these fields, we can then type in all the different things that we may or may not need to in an ICAO flight plan. Special handling is for things like heads of state and hospital and medevac and those kind of things. Scrolling down, we've got our destination. We've got our alternate. That's pre-populated, but say we want to change that, we can then tap on this as well. CWR, and we'll make OR, Corowa. I always get Corowa and Cara mixed up. So now it's populated. Griffith and there. I can delete that out of there. There we go. Corowa in here. Added to our destination. We can add SAR remarks, emergency radios, all these things can be changed, added, whatever. Now that's our first stage. Let's take stage 2 to change to our second stage. Again, scrolling through, we've got our flight rules in here, but let's just say that we want to do IFR and then change to VFR at some point. We can do that. it then gives us what, let's say when we get to Cowra, we want to change to VFR. So we've now altered our flight plan to be IFR to Cowra and then VFR to Tamworth. All the aircraft details probably going to remain the same. Our departure point ETD is not filled in. So it's a nice, lovely green colour. And we can say we'll leave there at 5:45 p.m. There's our route, altitude. We can then use the altitude optimizer. Get our flight time, our endurance, destination, alternate if we require, and so on. So once we're happy with that, we can set a test flight plan and then submit. And this will send a two-stage flight plan that's IFR and then IFR to VFR. And when you see this, are you enjoying AvPlan EFB? 5 stars. Thank you very much. It actually matters. So we have our flight plan from Moorabbin to Albury and then Albury to Tamworth. The IG there is where Instrument Flight General Aviation, and you notice now in that one we're Y, so we're VFR, IFR to VFR, and we're GA. There's our flight plan, and then from Cowra, we're VFR to then our destination. So at this point on, we're monitoring the flight plan, and if there's any changes, we'll be notified. We've sent a test flight plan. It's really easy. Once you've sent a test flight plan, to send a real one. We can tap turn off no send and tap submit. And then it's also submit a real flight plan from here to our destination. We'll say, so now we've actually got our call sign up here, FSF. So this is a real flight plan from Moorabbin to Tamworth. Now when you are filing flight plans, you can do it up to 7 days in advance. So if you've got a flight early in the morning, do your flight plan the night before and file it, or the night or day before and file it. And then you can pick it up later. It'll be there waiting. Your wind information and all those times aren't actually in your flight plan. All your flight plan has in there is your TAS, and the air traffic control system actually applies the winds of the day to get an idea of what your sort of en route times are going to be. If your departure time changes for whatever reason, and we want to resubmit our flight plan again, that's really easy. We can just alter our departure time in our plan. So let's say 0630, for example. So we've changed that, and then we just tap submit. And this will just amend our flight plan with the new departure time. So now we've been accepted as a change. There's our call sign, and we've changed our departure time. From that. So yes, it's very simple to make changes to a flight plan. Now there was an issue where you were reusing flight plans and you get a funny error saying could not find original plan in NAIPS. That error, that issue has been resolved as of about 6 weeks ago. So now if you're submitting a flight plan that you'd used before, in the distant past, it won't try and amend it. It will just file a new flight plan. So tap planning to go back. So once we've filed a flight plan, we can also choose to delete it. So I've filed a real flight plan, and I probably want to actually remove it, and we can tap cancel notification and then OK to delete it. And it says flight plan has been deleted, so we've cancelled that flight plan. And there's the 2 stages. And then we can tap OK. Now, one thing we can do when we file a SAR time, so if you're flying VFR, we file a SAR time, we can actually cancel that inside the app as well. So what I'll do is show you an example of that. I'll create just a quick flight plan, say from Melbourne to Portland. You can see the weather there is not quite as good, so we've got a little VFR, but you know the clouds a bit less than a nice day. So we've popped in a route. We can submit ICAO flight plan via NAPES. We're doing a VFR plan. Again, it's populated all our aircraft settings. We don't need to do that again. We can put in a departure time of that's 5 p.m. an altitude. It's now showing us VFR altitude in the optimize altitude function. And we can populate a SAR time for our arrival. So by default, it's using an hour past our planned ETA. So we can then tap away to enter that. So SAR for arrival at Portland. So it automatically populates all the SAR time information. We can send that off to Air Services. There we go. Now, when you file a SAR time, we'll prompt you for this. And what we're doing here is actually creating a calendar invite for your SAR time to remind you to cancel it. So there's now a reminder in my calendar with the phone number to call, reminding me 10 minutes prior to cancel my SAR time. I've done a no send, so it's populated here with no send, so I know it's just a practice one. So there's not really a flight plan there, but I can show you what to do. So we go and fly this flight. We get to our destination. We can tap on SAR time. We can see that, oh, it's a simulated SAR time in red, because we want you to know that wasn't a real one. We can tap on that. The default is changed by our app, and we can either submit a new SAR time or we can cancel the one we have. If I tap on cancel, it then says we've arrived at our destination. So we don't need to talk to them on the phone. We can do the whole phone-based social distancing thing and cancel our SAR time. So there's an example of what to do there. The flight plan form also is a great place to enter things like delays in our flight plan. If we have a delay, if we want to put a delay here at Albury, for example, when we're filing our flight plan, under other details, we can actually edit the delay field. Okay, AY 00330, and that'll apply the delay to our AV, not AY. So you can see here, it's now added that delay into our flight plan here. So the time interval was 13 minutes plus the 30-minute delay. So it's a very quick and easy way of adding delays. So back to our en route. Some of the other sort of advanced weather features that we can do here. Weather is accessible under our radar icon here. METARs, SIGMETs and AirMets. We can turn that on and see what they look like. METARs again, color-coded on the map. The grey ones mean that the reporting station doesn't have enough information to populate the meta with all the values. And then lastly, these are any active SIGMETs or AirMets also depicted, but they're purple as purple splodges, but we don't have any at the moment, so I can't show you. To view a SIGMET, we can just tap on that with our finger. A couple of other things you can do with your flight plan. There's this button box with a button with the arrow coming out of. That allows us to share our flight plan. We can send our flight plan via email to another person. We can airdrop it to someone else, so beaming it to another device. We'll send it to another app on the iPad. So that might be a file app like Dropbox or so on. Anyone that uses FlightStream, which is a Garmin device to connect between an iPad and the avionics in the cockpit, can use AvPlan to create a flight plan and then shove it into your avionics. It requires the Garmin Pilot app, which you will probably have if you have a FlightStream anyway, because that's probably the easiest way to do all the database updates for all your Garmin avionics these days. Anyway, so if you have that, you can then beam this flight plan to your avionics. It brings up the Garmin Pilot app. When we do that, I don't want to know what's new. And if I signed into my account, oh God. Okay, we want to load the active route. And Garmin Pilot crashed. Oh no, I haven't updated Garmin Pilot on this device. Yeah, it has that issue. Anyway, it works with the latest version of Garmin Pilot. So there, if we have a Dyno Sky View, you can beam your flight plan into a Dyno Sky View. And you can do the Tweety or Facebooky thing. And then lastly, if you have multiple devices, you can force this flight plan to sync to your other devices, say a mobile phone, via our cloud system. Now, a couple of things that are coming up with AvPlan EFB. We're in constant development. And at the moment, we're really working flat chat on a number of features. We've in the process of greatly improving the way that aircraft models sync across your devices. At the moment, probably the most reliable way of syncing aircraft profiles is via email. So you do that under Settings, Aircraft Type Database, and then pick an aircraft type. And then down here in the options, there's the option to copy it, share the profile. So if you create a new profile, you use that to share it with others. And then you can share it to yourself, other people with these email or send options here. At the moment, they're the most reliable way of synchronizing aircraft models. We're greatly improving that in our next release, 7.10, so that they pretty much seamlessly synchronize as they change. And we're also giving the ability that if you're a company, you can synchronize aircraft devices across all your devices in your company. That synchronizing function will also expand to documents. So the documents you've got on one device will synchronize across the others, and flight plans, which is already there actually, but not for a company, and some other stuff as well. User waypoints, that's the other one. We're also in the process of greatly enhancing our maps with a more digital-based solution, but that's available today on Android, but not on iOS, but that's in progress. And then we've got the ability to structure flight plans into folders. That's been worked on as well. So there's a bunch of stuff going on. We've just added whole new WAC charts for Australia. They're actually really nice, and the ability to show the islands as well. So, Lord Howe, Norfolk, that kind of thing. So under here is the new sort of Australia-wide WAC chart. So check them out. They're all new as of last week. So yeah, they're absolutely brilliant. So give it a go. We also are working on some different flight plan printing options as well. So there will be an A5 based one, and also a landscape printing option as well. That should be out in the next sort of 2 or 3 weeks, hopefully. Yeah, that's another area of development. So thank you very much for attending. What I'm going to do now is try and open it up for some QA and stop the recording. So if you're listening to the recording, thanks very much for watching, and learn more at www.avplan-efb.com, or chat to us or send us an email. We're always here to help. So thank you very much.